Oh, hello there, yes. Well, I think the phrase is, make peace, you fools. Yes, Ron Rudstead. You may remember him. He was in that long film, The Longest Day, wasn't he? With loads of other stars, yes. Yeah, astounding they didn't hang him after the war. Anyway, there's a lesson there. Anyway, today I thought we'd talk about media elites and all the rubbish in the British media and the way that they conveniently forget the very thing that they're doing at the time that they're doing it, one might say. I noticed this in the Daily Mail. Give me perusing of the Daily Mail as I do. What's your personality type? Scientists say all men, bear that in mind, fit into 6 categories. Take the test to see if you're Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Gamma, Omega or Sigma. Now you may recall from the sort of manosphere and all the incels a while ago that they were forever going on about alpha males, and when all of them decided they weren't actually alpha males because, number one, it isn't scientific, and number two, there is no such thing as an alpha male, and number three, is the biggie, is that all of the people that think about those things aren't inevitably alpha males. They are something else entirely. Probably sentences beginning with the word sad, for example. But anyway, so you have this guide in the mail to finding out what type you are. Bearing in mind it does say that it doesn't apply to gay men, which is something that intrigues me. So it isn't all men to start with. And, yes, your average incel, sad that they aren't going to be gay because, well, that would just be gay, wouldn't it? Anyway, we do get our 6 categories, and handily they draw cartoons of them because that's exactly the science that's involved here. And the examples of the non-people that they're showing you are indeed fictional characters, but it's so inherently contradictory. There is, for example, on the the Gamma male, you get book-smart types who lack social skills, money and mental toughness. And an example of that they've given in the manosphere is Tony Stark, the fictional character from Iron Man, who is very, very resourceful, very masculine, has a great way with women, and is a billionaire. So you can see how brilliant that is. Yes, the company involved in this does indeed do personality tests, which is another thing that isn't really a thing. I mean, you can do a personality test and it will probably tell you things that you know about yourself already. But yes, the actual company involved does that, and it's just what we would call rubbish. Still doesn't stop the Daily Mail pumping this stuff out, saying things to young impressionable males that they can't possibly live up to. Never mind. Anyway, moving on to the meat of the piece, we have Celia Walden. Stop teaching white children to feel guilty, which I think is addressed to me. Obviously, I spend most of my weeks, teaching white children to feel guilty. I've got nothing else to do. Between lectures on white privilege, the gender spectrum and toxic masculinity, the younger generation can't catch a break. Yes, the hellscape that I have created for them. Not Celia, you understand, Mrs. Piers Morgan. No, not her. No, it's the liberal elite like me that are doing it, not her, people that work in media and just spout absolute nonsense along the lines of, well, Tony Stark, Iron Man and personality tests, and indeed alpha males. But anyway, it's a piece sort of inevitably praising Catherine Burstyn, as you do, as saying about how dreadful identity politics is. But of course what it does is actually just deals with the most base form of identity politics it can, cake and indeed eat it. But let's have a look. Here we go. They're not learning algebra or indeed grammar because of the moral high grounders who have decided that their virtual signalling agenda is more important. Yeah, that's me, yeah? Because once you've done explaining the legitimacy of every one of the 72 genders, that all white people are racist, and that, as Brits, we should all be ashamed of our colonial past, there's not much time left in the school day for the solving the equations. Yes, I mean, obviously, that's what I do in my maths lessons, because 3 hours in a maths lesson, which is pretty much as punishing as anything I can really think of. I prefer to try and keep maths lessons at about an hour or two max because, well, they are quite tough, and you can rarely get past number 58 on the list of different genders. Obviously, that's what I do. That's what I'm employed for. Nonsense. Anyway, never mind that we could consequently be launching literate and innumerate children into the world. Yes, and indeed, again, we might think about that because the problem with that is, of course, that young people these days are more literate and numerate than they have ever been in British history. If you want to catch a group of people that are functionally illiterate or innumerate, it will be the over 50s. Lots of people that disagree with me on that do like to write comments to me. They're the ones without capitalisation, punctuation, or any real sense of grammar. Yes. Anyway, moving on. These two things can devastate an adult's life chances and happiness, limiting their access to basic services alongside better paying and more rewarding jobs, and perpetuating an intergenerational cycle of poverty. Let's get stuck into white privilege, into self-flagellation and social division. Yes, indeed. So, despite the fact that, exam scores are going up, and they are, yes, I know, they are actually a lot harder than they used to be, so they're actually very, very tough to do. But exam scores go up every year, and our rankings in the PISA tables are looking quite healthy compared to what they used to, but it still isn't good enough because apparently I am just too left-wing on a basic level to be able to do my job correctly, a job that Celia has no idea of what it involves because she just makes stuff like this up. Now, you might argue she's being mildly humorous. I don't think she is. This is the standard refrain that we get from, like, the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail about my job, which is pretty tough at the best of times and is not really helped by them sticking their oar in. Anyway, moving on very, very slightly from that, it's worthwhile just thinking about, what else she has to say about these things, right? Okay, let's have a look at this. What do you think the psychological impact of telling a generation that they are inherently bad will be? Well, your newspaper, Celia, does exactly that on a very regular basis. We're forever being told that Gen Z and Gen Y are useless. Not me doing that, yeah? I tend to big up my young people because they tend to be fairly nice and fairly brilliant in their own particular way. The kids that I deal with are, kids that have found it very, very hard to be in schools. Not like Catherine, right? Catherine deals with kids in terms of getting them into GCSEs and A levels and university, and she does her job very well. I am sure of that. I do something different, but I can be blamed for things so easily by people like Celia that have no idea what I do. If I was to turn up outside a classroom where the child was in it battering things with a large blunt object, and there was me and there was Celia and there was Catherine, there are one of the three of us that you would want to handle the situation, and it isn't the two women. Still, I would say that, wouldn't I, as a not alpha male or something. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking, not good. The teaching of toxic masculinity, there we go, wasn't a massive success, was it? Well, yes, I think it was actually, to a certain extent. But, if we want to go with stereotypical views of what masculinity is, we will end up with all of the nasty incels and toxic masculinity that is alpha males trying to live up to a fictional character. Yes, it used to be John Wayne, and now it's Tony Stark or something. I don't really care. Okay, you can see all of these kind of cartoon males that are out there. I'll point you to someone like Connor Tomlinson or the other blokes at the Lotus Eaters. I'm sorry, but if you think they're fine examples of masculinity, you need to think about what your notions of masculinity are. Very, very odd people that really don't like women and do have a notion of toxicity about them, which is one of the reasons why whenever they dip their toe into actual politics, they tend to get bitten off by the swimming sharks of reality. I mean, if it was the resulting dissatisfaction, social dislocation, poor academic performance and poor mental health epidemic is anything to go by, and the white privilege narrative is scarily similar. You're toxic, not because of your gender this time, but your skin colour and your country of birth. Yes, it's awful, isn't it? Those things that I promote. But if you take a cursory look at the Daily Telegraph today, or the Daily Mail, or any of the media outlets there are that deal with the moving image, you will discover that there's an awful lot of identity politics out there, and it's all centred on people of a particular hue or religion. It's not me promoting identity politics and using it in a divisive way, which is likely to have enormously detrimental impacts on society. That's Celia for you, and or the rest of the crowd that she moves with. I mean, after all, can you imagine her, sitting down for breakfast with hubby Piers Morgan? Yeah. I wonder what they talk about. Do you think that they angst over whether or not it is now okay a year and a half later to call the mass destruction of an entire group of people, including very young children, a genocide? I don't know, maybe they do. It's not one of the things that I necessarily have to do, because I can actually recognise these things myself very easily, because I'm the one that's not putting a filter of politics and indeed self-aggrandisement or self-gain in front of it. Anyway, final one to finish up. I did have to smile at this with Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick, who, in the real world, Reynolds would have lost his job. In Star Wars world, there are no consequences. Yes, it would be really awful, wouldn't it, if you had a not very good government minister who engaged in stuff that, might well be illegal. Robert Jenrick. Still, these are the wonderful libertarians that we need to look up to, don't we, as fine examples, no doubt, of some form of alpha, beta, or indeed zeta males. I don't care. They live in a world that is constructed out of thin air, and therefore model themselves on ridiculous notions of what is right and wrong. And whenever those things don't actually transpire into the real world, a bit like Iron Man and the rest of the Marvel universe, then they neatly subset it, and it must be someone else's fault, preferably someone they don't know that's just getting on with a job and actually contributing to society. Anyway, rant over. Do have a glorious and lovely and glorious one if you can, and if you can't, blame Celia Walden. I just have.